Your alarm has been going off for 11 minutes. You've hit snooze twice. Your eyes are open before your body agrees to move. You check your phone first, before anything else, the way you always do. 9 new emails. 3 from your manager, Doug, time-stamped 11:45 p.m., 12:15 a.m., and 6:02 a.m. Doug doesn't sleep much. He's decided, somewhere along the way, that you shouldn't either. You sit up. You catch yourself in the dresser mirror across the room. You're 29. The face looking back could pass for 38. You get dressed in the same rotation you always do. A gray button-down, dark slacks, the shoes that don't hurt after 9 hours standing at a printer. Nothing that feels like you. Just clothes that clear a dress code. You grab a protein bar off the counter on your way out, eat it in the elevator because breakfast at the table stopped happening around year 2. Your car is a 2018 Toyota Camry, paid off now, but for 3 years it cost you $380 a month, money that left your account before you ever got to decide what to do with it. You sit in the same 15 minutes of traffic on the same stretch of interstate, take the same exit, park in the same garage, badge into the same building, ride the elevator to the same 9th floor. You sit down at a desk you've had for 5 years. You open your laptop, you start answering the 9 emails. And somewhere underneath the routine, a question surfaces that you've gotten fairly skilled at ignoring. Is this the whole shape of it? Is this what the rest of your life looks like? On repeat? Until someone hands you a pin for 25 years of service and calls it a celebration? Rewind 5 years. You're 24, freshly out of a state university with a finance degree you picked because it seemed practical, because your father approved of it, because everyone around you was choosing something adjacent to the same thing. Graduation day, your loan balance sits at $34,000. It feels enormous and also somehow not urgent because you have a job now, a real one. You get hired at a regional insurance and investment firm, roughly 250 employees, the kind of company your relatives recognize by name at holiday dinners. Your first day is a Tuesday in August. Your shirt is new, bought for $38 at an outlet mall, slightly too big through the shoulders. You don't care. You're proud of the badge with your name printed on it. The office has the usual texture: gray cubicle walls, fluorescent lighting, a break room with 2 microwaves and a coffee machine that's always slightly broken. A woman from HR walks you through orientation. She's been there 19 years and tells you so within the first 10 minutes, the way people do when a number has become part of their identity. Your desk sits in the center of the floor, nowhere near a window, a chair that sinks 2 inches the moment you sit in it, a welcome folder with your benefits paperwork, and a company pen that runs out of ink within the month. Your starting salary is $48,000. After tax, after rent, after the loan payment and the car payment, there isn't much left standing at the end of any given month. But you're 24. You assume there's time to fix that later. The first 2 years pass in a texture you'll later describe, if anyone asks, as fine. Just fine. You learn the software, you learn the vocabulary, circle back, take it offline, low-hanging fruit, words that carry weight in meetings without meaning much of anything out them. You learn that "I hope this email finds you well" is apparently required at the top of every message, a sentence you'll end up typing hundreds of times without once meaning it literally. Your manager, Doug, is 41, drives a black SUV, arrives at 7 a.m. and leaves after 7 p.m., and seems to run on some fuel other than sleep. He's not cruel, he's just been shaped by the same building for 11 years, long enough that risk has become something he can no longer afford to take. Your days develop a rhythm you don't choose so much as absorb. Mornings are emails and spreadsheets, afternoons are meetings in a glass-walled conference room, powerful slides clicking forward, heads nodding at the right intervals. Lunch is 30 minutes, usually a sandwich from home, eaten at your desk while you keep scrolling. The commute becomes the part of the day you notice most. 28 minutes each way, the same 3 exits, occasionally stretched by 10 extra minutes of construction that makes your jaw tighten and your fingers grip the wheel a little harder. You used to use the drive to think about something. Now the thoughts repeat. What to make for dinner, whether the laundry can wait another day, how many more of these drives are actually left in a life. By year 2, you notice the dread arriving earlier every Sunday. Not at bedtime, but around 4 in the afternoon. A small tightening low in your chest that has a name everyone around you uses so casually it sounds optional. It isn't optional. It's just familiar enough that nobody questions why a weekend should end in a low-grade physical symptom. Year 3 is when the automatic feeling sets in. You could run the reports in your sleep. You could sit through Doug's meetings without absorbing a single new fact. You start noticing the clock differently. Not glancing at it, but watching it, the way you'd watch water drain slowly from a tub. 9:41, 10:18, 11:52. Minutes that used to disappear now feel individually accounted for, and none of them feel like they're yours. You try to fix something. You spend a Saturday building a simple system for tracking client follow-ups, something that would save the team roughly 4 hours a week in duplicated emails. You bring it to Doug in your one-on-one. He looks at it for 11 seconds. "That's interesting," he says, "but let's stick with what we've got. Clients are used to the current process." You close your laptop, you go back to your desk. You don't build anything else for a while. That night, you look around the office in a way you hadn't before. Really look. Some of your coworkers have been at that company for 15, 20 years. Their hair has gone gray. Their kids have grown up. But their desks, their meetings, their spreadsheets, none of it has moved an inch. You imagine the version of yourself sitting exactly there in 15 years, and something in your stomach turns over, quietly, without drama. You catch a reflection in the bathroom mirror one morning. Dark circles, 27 years old, looking tired in a way that sleep doesn't seem to fix anymore. You ask yourself plainly, without flinching, is this actually what I want, or is this just what I never stopped to question? That night, you can't sleep. You open your laptop at 1 a.m. and start searching, not for a new job, but for something underneath the question. Financial independence, passive income ideas, how people leave jobs without another job lined up. You read for 2 hours. Something small clicks into place. You don't need to be rich in some abstract, unreachable sense. You need enough distance from one paycheck that a single person's opinion of your performance stops being able to control your entire week. You start small, almost embarrassingly small. You move your $7,200 in savings out of a checking account earning 0.4% into a high-yield savings account earning 4.6%. The math is unglamorous but real. At the old rate, you were earning about $29 a year. At the new rate, roughly $330. It takes 6 minutes to move. You build a spreadsheet and log every dollar you spend for 30 days. The number that stops you is the coffee line, $126 a month, almost entirely from a drive-thru you don't even particularly like. You buy a $34 coffee maker. You start bringing lunch instead of the $11 food truck habit that's quietly cost you over $2,600 in the last 2 years. You cancel 2 streaming subscriptions and a gym membership you haven't used since March. Your monthly savings rate climbs from around $180 to just over $600. It isn't the number itself that changes something in you. It's the sensation underneath it. For the first time in 3 years, a dollar leaving your account is a decision you made, not a habit that happened to you. Year 4 is when the side income becomes real instead of theoretical. You start reselling, not things you own, but undervalued items you find secondhand. A coffee table found for $35 at an estate sale, cleaned and refinished over a weekend, sold for $175 within 4 days. You do it again. A vintage floor lamp bought for $18, sold for $85. A set of dining chairs, $70 in, $240 out. You develop something like an eye for it, the ability to see a $30 dresser under a bad stain and picture the $260 piece underneath. Word spreads in small, ordinary ways. A property manager you've never met before starts calling you first when a unit gets cleared out. A friend of a friend moving out of state sells you an entire apartment's worth of furniture for $220. You sell the pieces individually over 6 weeks for just under $1,900. The extra income lands somewhere between $500 and $900 a month, inconsistent but real, deposited into an account separate from your paycheck so you can watch it accumulate without it disappearing into the general blur of rent and groceries. Meanwhile, at work, something shifts in the opposite direction. You stop staying late. You stop raising your hand for the extra project. You do exactly what's required and nothing more. Doug notices, eventually. "You seem distracted," he says one afternoon. Not unkindly. You tell him you're just tired. He nods and walks away. He doesn't ask again, not because he doesn't notice, but because the version of you that still produces reports on time is the only version he actually needs. Year 5 is the year the math stops being an exercise and starts being a plan. You're sitting in one of Doug's quarterly meetings, watching a line on a graph move upward while 14 other tired faces nod at the same intervals they always nod at. You do a rough count in your head. Everyone in that room is at least 3 years older than you, and every single one of them is talking, in the hallway afterward, about how many years they have left until retirement. Not how many years until something they want, until retirement, until the finish line arrives on someone else's schedule. You go home and open a blank spreadsheet. You write down 3 numbers. Current savings, $14,300. A target that would let you leave without another job lined up, $55,000. A combined monthly savings rate between the paycheck and the reselling of roughly $1,900. You do the subtraction. $40,700 needed divided by $1,900 a month comes out to just under 22 months. Now 5 years, not 10. 22 months on a pace you're already sustaining. You keep both engines running. The job during the day, the resale business on evenings and weekends, plus a small consulting side project helping 2 local businesses clean up their online listings, another $300 to $500 a month depending on the client. You put spare cash into a Roth IRA, into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, and you stop checking it daily because you've learned by now that watching it hourly changes nothing except your blood pressure. 18 months later, not 22, you got there faster than planned, the number in the account crosses $55,000. You don't feel triumphant so much as clear. The way a room looks different once you finally cleaned a window you didn't realize was dirty. You walk into Doug's office on a Tuesday morning. You sit down across from his desk before he's finished a sentence to someone on the phone. When he hangs up, you tell him you're resigning. He blinks. "Effective when?" he asks. 2 weeks, you say. He asks if you have something else lined up. You tell him no. He asks if this is about the raise cycle, whether you're negotiating. You tell him it isn't. He offers one anyway, on the spot, a number that would have stopped you in year 2. You decline it politely and mean it. You spend your last 2 weeks doing ordinary things, finishing a report nobody will remember reading, training the coworker who will take over your accounts, saying goodbye in the break room with the same broken coffee machine that's been broken for 5 years. Some people look at you like you've lost something. A couple look at you like you found something. Most just look surprised, the specific surprise of watching someone actually do the thing they'd only ever talked about doing. On your last day, you don't take the elevator down. You take the stairs, all 9 flights, slowly, feeling each one under your feet, the way you'd want to feel the last few steps of anything that took 5 years to walk through. You get in the Camry. You drive home at 10:40 in the morning and there's no traffic because everyone else is still at their desks, still refreshing the same inbox you used to refresh. You pass the building once in the rearview mirror. You don't slow down to look at it longer than that. 6 weeks later, on an ordinary Wednesday, your alarm doesn't go off because you didn't set one. You wake up somewhere around 7:40, not from panic, just from daylight through the blinds. You make coffee in the $34 machine that's now paid for itself many times over. You check the resale account, $1,140 in pending sales this month, a dresser and 2 lamps waiting for pickup. You check the index fund, up for the quarter, though you don't linger on the number the way you used to. You think briefly about the version of yourself sitting at that center floor desk 5 years ago, watching the clock drip through an afternoon that felt like it belonged to someone else. That version was waiting for permission, for a single dramatic moment that would announce the exit. What actually happened was quieter and slower. A savings account moved, a coffee habit swapped, a dresser refinished on a Saturday, repeated enough times that the exit built itself without asking your permission first. Nobody threw you a party for any of it. Doug has already replaced your desk with someone else's name. The building is exactly where it was, still humming with the same fluorescent light, still running the same meetings at the same hour. You just aren't in the room for them anymore. You finish your coffee. Outside, the day is unremarkable, ordinary, the same kind of Wednesday it's always been. Except this time, nobody's expecting anything from you before 11:42 p.m., and there's no alarm waiting to argue with that fact tomorrow morning.